Dr. Rupa Huq to move the motion.
Thank you, Ms Noakes, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairship. It's that time of year again when traditionally, if you're in a seaside town or a big city, the sight of beruxacked groups dressed in very fashionable attire, often pastel colours, descending on our streets is a common sight. And local householders, loads in Torbay, loads in Ealing as well, although a lot less than they used to be. Local householders, the Minister will know as well as a local, also get leaflets coming in through the door asking if you've got a spare room or two, and saying that there are posts going as host families, promising pretty decent money. The reason for all this? ELT, English language teaching, English language schools, this whole phenomenon that peaks in the summer months. And typically it offers an all-round experience to typically people who are teenagers for a number of weeks. And they get the whole immersion, a bed and breakfast, kind of English breakfast with a typical English family at the start of it, English lessons during the day, and then perhaps a spot of early evening baristering or pulling pints before dinner en famille, and then a bit of sightseeing and cultural programme built in there as well, maybe London, Oxford, Southend, those sort of things. And either side of this weekend, I've done a bit of, had an insight into this subculture. I visited 2 of these English language schools in Ealing, Edwards Language School and West London English School. And they tell me that these 2 weeks now and a week from now are set to be the busiest of the year for them. And the story that comes out of this is, if we're being charitable, a mixed one, I would say, Ms Noakes. So at WLES, where I was yesterday, I saw multiple classes. They've actually outgrown the couple of rooms that they take in an office block on the Uxbridge Road. But then the other one, Edwards, they are in a large Victorian house just down the road from, on the same Uxbridge Road, although it's called something else at that point of the road. They used to span 2 houses, they're in 1 now, so they've halved in size. They were set up by lecturers from West London University, which is also in my seat, 30 years ago, and then they got swallowed up by a chain, and that chain's operations in Brighton have not survived. So I keep saying what used to be, because although in its last normal year of trading, that's 2019, there were 550,000 students, half of them under 18, contributing 1.4 billion into our UK economy, supporting 35,000 jobs and underpinning the UK's wider 20 billion education market. This feels to me like a sector that's dangerously sort of at risk of being in decline with the end of freedom of movement and visa changes. After speaking to the trade body English UK and after emails from the Association of British Travel Agents, Tourism Alliance, the British Educational Trade Alliance, they've all been falling over themselves to brief me for this short debate. Some startling figures emerge. The British Educational Travel Association, BETA, say that the number of student groups coming from the EU have dropped between 2019 and 2022 by 84%. And in Ealing, not that long ago, I'd have had a choice of 5 different schools to visit and sample. 2 of them that had been there, one since 1980, in fact, have completely bitten the dust. A third one exists on paper as an online operation, leaving only its Wimbledon branch with Ealing gone. So, for context, while West London's FE College, which has an Ealing, West London FE College, it's called, it has an Ealing campus, they do have English language teaching offering some of this, and some universities offer it too. The bulk of this provision locally and across the country are actually private businesses, which means they've sometimes been viewed with suspicion. Although the British Council accreditation, that regime that they have to, the hoops that they have to go through the regulatory framework, is amongst the most stringent in the world. And to attain trusted status is not cheap either. It weighs in at £20,000. So is... Oh, gosh, I think the Honourable Lady was first. The Honourable Lady from the lovely city of Bath, who is a polyglot herself, is completely right. I think when I was a kid, we did a trip to Le Touquet in 1984 on some sort of group passport of that nature. The teacher had it, everyone was waved through. I think the kid who was had slightly dodgy status duct at that moment when we did the head count. I'm only revealing all this now. But no, she's right. We have to find a solution. A lot of, I think the majority of European kids under 18 don't have passports. They travel on ID cards. The government said it won't budge. So that's a sensible solution. I think I heard Jim Shannon next, and then my honourable friend from Cardiff. Again, I completely concur with the honourable member that we've all heard about the backlog. Maybe the Minister will say something about that, with people getting passports around this time of year. They want to go on holiday. These laborious, ponderous hoops that people have to jump through just seem a bit too much for what used to be a relatively simple thing when we had freedom of movement. And shall I say something that he can intervene on first? Or, oh, okay, I'll go for him now. Why not? Why not? Okay. My honourable friend is so right, and he's from a capital city, of course. So I said at the beginning, cities as well. I understand that language schools have boomed in Cardiff from a small number a decade ago. But, you know, they're in jeopardy now. And we're meant to be going for global Britain, aren't we? And so what he says, if we're going to shrivel up and, you know, put the barriers up, it just seems completely wrong. We should be enabling students to study these languages on our shores, not the complete opposite, which seems to be what's happening. It may be unintended consequences, but I know the Minister is a reasonable man. And when I come to my list of demands, I'm hoping that he will see sense. So, I mean, look, the fact that I mean, it's kind of difficult. The fact that we've had a global pandemic, which nobody foresaw, means it's difficult to disentangle what was Brexit, what was COVID. But look, a bit of Brexit proofing would not go amiss. And the surveys that UK English have done show that it is a major factor, the ID card issue. And we should be proud, of course, of the English language. It's our greatest export. We can all be proud of it, but there is a danger, as my honourable friend from Cardiff says, of killing off the market. As recently as 2019, we had twice the number of any other English-speaking competitive country. And this is a business that operates on pretty tight margins as well. One of the school owners I spoke to said, I'm paid the highest of everyone here, but I like doing this. I want to spread the English language. Money doesn't matter to me. But we're in danger now of losing this lucrative category of student to Ireland and Malta. They're both pretty tiny. They have capacity issues. They actually can't cope. And yeah, I mean, look, if we're being fair, admittedly, this sector has suffered multiple hits way before Brexit. So Ben Anderson, the principal of Edwards Language School, said, there were a tiny minority of visa shops in the 1990s created by the old Tier 4 visas. Gordon Brown ramped up regulation. So, you know, the start of it is not all Brexit. It started longer ago, but all this stuff has been put on steroids with the end of freedom of movement. So further tightening occurred under the coalition as this long-time form of soft power became conflated with immigration targets, always unachieved to get net migration down to tens of thousands until about 2014. Asif Musa of WLES said there was a problem, so a crackdown was needed. Rightly, private schools lost their licences, but then UKVI went OTT. In 2012, London Metropolitan University temporarily lost its right to recruit international students from outside the EU because of serious systematic failure, in the government's words, of its monitoring of its international body, and new checks were added, extra monitoring. But the problem is you get a conflation here of language students who are temporary and have got more in common with tourists, with cutting down on bogus net migration. And the legacy of this whole period, which persists to today and it's been added to with Brexit, is that there's now a presumption. One of these school owners said that basically it's as if they're looking to shut you down. They're looking to suspend your licence. So there's a danger of throwing baby out with bathwater. English is indisputably the lingua franca of the world. So why are we creating unnecessary obstacles when there's a hungry young public eager to take courses in it on our shores? Visit Britain in 2020 found language school students stay 3 times as long as the standard tourist and spend twice as much, crucially, in local communities. Accommodation, providers, local transport, cafes, attractions. Now, Morrissey, in Everydays Like Sunday, sang about the seaside towns they forgot to close down. And they did used to have a bit of a God's waiting room reputation, but many have been revitalised by this vibrant business. rejuvenated with these youngsters coming in, and I feel we can't just do nothing while it's hitting the rocks. So Ealing losing 3 out of 5 colleges isn't alone. The Guardian says that there's just 7 out of what were 20 in Hastings. The Minister, I'm sure, will share my concern that both LAL and Devon School of English in Torbay have closed their doors. They're no more. I went on the websites, it says permanently closed. So while there's some post-COVID recovery underway, English UK reckon by the end of this year will be at between, at the moment, 40, maybe 60% of pre-pandemic volumes, but after an average 88% decline in student numbers over the last 2 years. So that is a far worse outcome. Again, my friend from Cardiff and I are on the DCMS committee. That's way worse than any other type of tourism. And 590 million pounds of lost revenue on 2021. Many current students. So this, I talked about the one that looked like it was booming yesterday, but a lot of that is leftover courses from 2020 that couldn't be taken that are now being realised. So they called it pent-up demand because they honoured all courses, whereas I think other schools gave vouchers, which turned out to be pretty meaningless. And these schools, as I say, operate on, one of them said, non-existent almost margins. And those who've not gone under, many of them are crippled by debt, which is a shame when the power of English throughout the world is an inestimable good. It's a key component of soft power. Those attending UK language schools, often when children and adolescents, are much more likely to go to a UK university. And I know, having worked in those, we're always encouraged to get those overseas students with their lucrative fees. And they're a linchpin, these language schools, of an important pipeline, so, which is coming under strain. So at one end, there's school exchange visits that might see them go into one of these schools. At the other end, they might return for HE. And if we think about it, 57 of our current world leaders have studied at UK universities. And there's often, a language component there. So the pipeline of host families is also under pressure. Cost of living makes the £200 to £250 a week per student, which used to be good money, go less far. And I'm told in Ealing, actually, there used to be established residents who could be relied on, but now that houses change hands for 2 million, these new generation of homeowners are a bit befuddled at why anyone would want kids in your face. So, and also there are things like Airbnb, less intrusive. So Brexit, what's Brexit got to do with it? Okay, I've got a list of mainly three recommendations that I'd like the Minister to take away. So, okay, enabling ID card travel, we've heard, is not happening. 90% of under 18s in Europe, mainland Europe, travel on ID only. But what about this idea that the member for Bath mentioned, the group travel thing? It would be the group leader who's in charge of them. There's no risk that these people would be absconding because they didn't with the previous EU travellers list. Youth mobility schemes, they could sign bilateral deals. They already exist with New Zealand, Australia, the USA, Japan, South Korea, Canada, New Zealand and others. You could do this with EU countries, the big ones, France, Germany, Italy. It can be done. I can supply him the paperwork. And then limited, I don't know if you've seen today's standards, we've got hospitality sector with loads of vacancies, limited work rights. Traditionally, part of this experience they would get would be maybe 10 hours a week, pulling pints or whatever. As part of their immersion, the adult, non-minor ones, valuable work-life skills. I think if you loosened up that, they used to be able to do it before, they could do it when they were university students. 75% of all ELT business in the UK is conducted in the summer bulge months of June to August, and that's when these seasonal vacancies are needed. It's been done for fruit picking. It's something that he could do too. Okay. Minister, I had a little bit extra. I'll just try and do that in a couple of sentences. So, I mean, the other thing that does worry me is that this hostile environment climate has prevailed at other levels too. So, as my honourable friend from Cardiff said, there's no danger of 11-year-olds absconding and becoming drivers in Eastbourne or whatever. So there's no need for border force to treat them as such. There seems to be this whole presumption everyone is a criminal. Sometimes people are asked at the border to provide means for their stay, and it's an all-inclusive package where meals, everything is in. So I think we should just think again about that. So in conclusion, what I would say is that last time this sector lobbied MPs, it was over coronavirus, and the government did accede to the additional relief fund. So I'm hoping they can do it again. It was, Ealing Council has administered loads. I get praised for it. So, he can't do anything about cost of living and business rates, so I'll leave that out of it. But let's have a concerted effort to improve our visa regime, to eliminate the attitudes of xenophobia towards overseas students. There were 2 really horrible incidents in Canterbury and Cambridge in 2019 at the height of when the papers were saying MPs are not allowing Brexit to happen. Really nasty incidents, those kind of things. We just need to have a better climate because, after all, levelling up, global Britain, Brexit opportunities, this is a lucrative sector that includes all of those. What is not to like?